Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Two Asian Blokes Podcast, a podcast where we talk about Asian pop culture, but not today, right, Tavi? Tavi's here.
Yes, that's right.
Hey.
Yeah. Oh, mixing up the intro. I mean, do you want to finish it off or just leave it at that?
Nah, we'll leave it at that, mate.
All right, mate.
All right.
Yeah. Today we're talking about The Stranger. So this movie has no Asians in it. It is an Australian film.
And if you are a new listener to our show, and if you can't tell from our accents, Tavi and I are actually Australian born.
Yeah, mate. Born a Shepparton, mate.
Yes, that's right. I was born in Preston, mate. It's pretty close.
Oh, were
mate.
you born in Preston? I didn't know that.
I was born in Preston, yeah.
Born in Preston. Oh, no wonder you're such a fucking hipster, mate.
It only
like
just
fancy
started to
food.
become hipster.
Yeah, that's very true. Yeah, Preston is such a nice area now. It's like there's so. It's basically that South Park episode.
Yes. What's it called? So
far. Yeah. It's really nice. Like I go there quite often with friends. I'm like, I don't even need to go to the
it's
city
all
anymore.
gentrified bars
Yeah.
and pizza shops, like artisanal pizza shops.
Like really good pizza shops. Yeah. I was like, man, this is Preston. It just used to be Preston to me used to just be the place where you get average yum cha
And decent pho as well.
And decent pho. Yeah. Now it's like, you can get quite a bunch of different things.
Yeah.
But yeah, we are Australian, as Dan said.
Generally, this podcast is dedicated to talking about Asian pop culture, but and promoting, good Asian content and some bad Asian content as well. We've done some episodes about stuff we don't like. But today, like Tavi said, we're mixing it up. We're doing an Aussie film because apparently there are good Aussie films out there, Tavi.
Yeah. Like, you and I probably don't have the highest opinion of Australian media, but that kind of sucks, man, because we are a first world country with a lot of resources and a lot of talented people. And it's like, why is the reputation like so bad? And
the best we can do is MasterChef.
The best we can do is MasterChef,
Which is it's not bad.
MasterChef. Yeah. I watch MasterChef, but
in terms of creative content, right? Like it's odd because you are an Australian filmmaker.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
But both you and I have grown up on the teat of Australian mainstream television. Channel 7, Channel 9, Channel 10, ABC, whatnot.
Yeah.
And I mean, when I think of Australian television, I think of things like Neighbours. Like
Home and Away.
Home and Away. And like just bad reality TV as well.
Yeah, bad reality.
Like reality TV in general. But like honestly, I haven't watched that much of that kind of stuff to form an opinion, positive or negative. But I just don't watch Australian content that much, you know what I mean?
Yeah, you're not missing out, man. Like, because as I said, like I watch MasterChef pretty regularly, though this season I haven't watched too much of it because I've been pretty busy. So, I mean, MasterChef is on right now as we're doing this episode. So, but yeah, like, I mean, when I think of Australian television, I think of the same thing. I think of bad reality shows and really cheesy, bad soapy dramas and very like unfunny comedies. Like there's a one that had Peter Hellier and Lisa McCune. It's called like How to Stay Married. It just looked bad. There's this other one called like North Shore. It's supposed to be like a crime drama. Just looks like another like Young and the Restless kind of thing. Just looks. The production values are always, like, very cheap. And I can say this because I know, like, people who work in the Aussie TV industry. And they always tell me which projects they're on. And they're like, oh, yeah, it's shit. Oh, it's a shit show. It's never positive. Most of the people that I've talked to that have worked on Australian projects, I'm going to say specifically, like, mainstream Australian projects. It's never anything like super positive. There's come to think of it though, there are some like interesting projects that I am probably not allowed to talk about, but there's some upcoming stuff that they actually say is quite good.
Okay.
So in the narrative field in section, but like usually when it's when it's film, it's actually quite positive, but when it comes to TV stuff, it's like, oh yeah, it's pretty shit. It's just like, yeah, it's a shit show,
And
but I get paid.
there are exceptions, right? I think like like things like Animal Kingdom, right? It's Is that a TV show or movie?
It's both. It was I think there was an adaptation into a TV show which I didn't watch, but Animal Kingdom was quite good. It's got Joel Edgerton.
Who was in this movie. We have talent. We have like actors.
Ben Mendelsohn. I mean, of course, there's the Hugh Jackman, and there's Russell Crowe, who's not Australian, but we've just adopted him. Margot Robbie, yes, of course,
and Thor himself. He's
Chris Hemsworth. So there's a lot of talent here, but most of the talent moves to LA and
for better opportunities, for more interesting opportunities.
Not necessarily more interesting, just more opportunities. And I don't necessarily want to move to LA. I have cousins there; they're great and nice place to visit, but I don't want to live there because just doesn't suit my vibe. I don't want to get stuck in the Hollywood circle.
But anyway, Australian movies side of things, right? Like It's generally positive, you said?
Yeah. I mean, there tends to be better. And we do have, like, some cult classics, of course, like the mainstream. There's Crocodile Dundee, who's, like, basically the stereotype of every single Australian in, like, outside of Australia.
Yeah.
But
as much as I love those films, probably set us back a bit, to be honest. In terms of how the world perceives Australia. But we got, Mad Max is a pretty good franchise.
Yeah, Mad Max. I mean, we got Bad Boy Bubby, which is on Netflix. That's a pretty interesting film.
But definitely, more recently, I've seen like pretty good stuff in the realm of Australian cinema, which we'll probably talk about at some point as well. Starting with this film.
Yeah, I think the Australian media board has set a rule, like Korea has done, where there needs to be a certain amount of Australian projects that are shown. So you are seeing a lot of them, and there's some good ones. Our good friend Boone has recommended The Dry, which we will cover at some point.
And the sequel is coming out soon.
Yeah, the sequel's coming out. I didn't know. It seemed like a one and done movie, but there must have been a second book. But I've heard very good things about that movie. Yeah,
I love Eric Bana.
Yeah, and I watched Limbo a couple weeks ago, which I admittedly don't remember very much of because I was very tired, but it was a good movie. Just very, very, very slow. You need to be in a certain kind of mood to watch that movie. So that one's got Simon Baker in it.
Oh yeah, I like Simon Baker, the mentalist himself.
Cool dude. Yeah.
I forgot he was Australian.
But I think the big reason, or the reason I wanted to start shifting to even cover some Australian content is that I myself would like to discover better Australian content and to change my perception that Australian media is bad. When I say Australian media, I don't want to just think maths, travel guides, fucking the Bachelor, the Bachelorette. These are the first things when you say Australian media, creative media. It's those are the first things that come to mind. And I kind of want to change that. Yeah, Peter Hellier.
Peter Hellier's alright. He's alright. We give him a bad rap.
We do give him a bit of a hard time. But yeah, there's good stuff. There's actually I watched another Australian horror film by a Japanese Australian director, Natalie Erica James. So she's a Japanese Australian director. And she did a movie called Relic, which I won't talk too much about because I actually would like to talk about that movie.
Well, we are eventually going to talk about The Stranger, which is on Netflix, starring Joel Edgerton and Sean Harris. But before we get to that grim movie, shall we do our reoccurring segment? What have we been watching? Cue the music. Tavi, what have you been watching?
What have I been watching? I recently been watching a lot of Michael Caine movies.
Okay.
For a certain episode that we have.
Oh, you're doing some research, are you?
I've been doing some research. I watched The Italian Job again.
Yeah. Is this the original or the...
Yeah, the original.
Okay, yeah.
Of course, the original. Michael Caine's not in the remake.
Is he not in the remake? I thought he might make a cameo or something.
No, I don't think so. Yeah. It's classic British filmmaking. It's it's very British. And it's a movie that me and my dad used to watch together a lot. So it's pretty special place in my heart. The old Italian Job. But I also watched a movie called Harry Brown, which also has Sean Harris in it.
Okay.
One of the leads in The Stranger. And yeah, it's a pretty, it's an alright movie. The premise is pretty simple. It's just kind of like an old timer who used to be in the Marines, but his neighborhood is being overrun by chavs, kind of very despicable people.
Sounds like Gran Torino. Is it like Gran Torino?
It's a more violent Gran Torino, where he kind of goes a little bit on a vigilante spree.
Okay.
Yeah, because one of his friends gets murdered by this group of chavs, and it's okay. It's not like a John Wick or even like a Taken, because this was a 2009 movie.
Okay.
So this would have been the year where Liam Neeson was flipping his hands around through 30 different cuts to knock over one guy in Taken. But I think the thing that set this one apart is it's a pretty violent movie.
Okay.
But there's not a lot of action in it, and Michael Caine does a good job. But he's not a tough badass as you would expect. But he's he would have been maybe 80 something when he was in this role, and this is a 11-year-old film now, and, or 14-year-old film. Yeah,
Michael Caine, he looks 80. You know what I mean? It's not like he's a fit 80. He's a regular person 80. Yeah. So it's only so much you can get away with when it comes to action at that age.
Yeah, but yeah, it's not a bad watch. It's quite short. There's a few. Yeah, it's all right. Some good cinematography. Sean Harris does a pretty good, unlikable junkie, intimidating junkie guy. Yeah, but yeah, there's not too much to this movie. It seemed like there was going to be a message about just whether or not he himself has to become an I saw the devil. Does he himself become the devil? But it's pretty straightforward. Has a nice ending or something, and it's just just basically
vengeance
gets
is good.
Away. Yeah, vengeance is good. Yeah. But yeah, what have you been watching?
I guess I'll talk about something light to balance the darkness that's coming ahead. I watched Exo Kitty. Have you heard of this show, Tavi?
Isn't that the spin-off of the All the Boys?
Yes.
Or I think it's something
so it
else.
is a spin-off of the All the Boys that I loved, which I haven't watched. But Netflix teen romance series. So this one is set in Seoul.
Okay, yeah.
And it's about the younger sister of the main character from those movies, and she's going to study abroad in a prestigious international school in Seoul, the school where her mother, who has passed away, attended. So she's going over there to kind of learn more about her mum, I guess. And I mean, it's like a romantic dramedy, I guess, is what you call it.
It's
clearly aimed at young teenage girls, I guess, or young women.
Probably not my cup of tea.
No, and I was gonna suggest covering it, but I know there's nothing I could tell you that would convince you to watch this show. So I'll just put it in this segment here. And honestly, it's not bad. It's not targeted towards me either, but it's, for what it is, it's pretty good. It's quite easy to digest. The episodes are quite short, 20-ish minutes long.
Oh, so it's a series. I thought it was a film.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
So it's similar to an Emily in Paris. It's a fish out of water story. Also, she meets boys. She falls in love, gets crushes, and all that.
Another show that I will probably never watch.
Well, I mean, it is similar to that show, but I will say the characters in Exo Kitty are much more likable than any of the characters in Emily in Paris.
I do know about Emily in Paris, and it's just kind of shitty characters, like unlikable people.
Yeah,
So,
like Exo Kitty is harmless. It's like quite fun. Like the story is quite cute, and when I first started watching it, I was like, okay, it's pretty by the number. I know exactly where this story is heading. But then it does take a left turn, which I wasn't expecting. So I appreciate that.
Does it turn into the sadness?
It doesn't quite turn into the sadness, Toby. But it definitely went in a direction that I appreciated. In terms of the romantic aspects of it, I guess. And I appreciate that it is also kind of mimicking a K-drama. Like the things that happen in this show make Seoul seem like the smallest place in the world. You know, there's people just bumping into each other. Everybody seems to know each other. You know, and like the drama that unfolds is like super unrealistic, but at the same time, that's exactly what a K-drama is as well. It's like these kind of implausible situations that cause drama. So I appreciate that, like the setting kind of matched the tone of what they were trying to replicate. My only criticism probably would be that this show could have been set anywhere, really. Like, I think they show like the city once, but aside from that, it's like all set in the school, like interiors, and like the Seoul setting doesn't really play a part in the show overall.
Like, I mean, I'm not privy to like watching stuff that is aimed at like young, like teenage girls. I mean, we covered 20th Century Girl for Valentine's Day, and I actually genuinely like that movie. But like, I do tend to have a bias when if I know that I'm watching an American production in this field, I'm like, probably not going to interest me. Like, I'd be more inclined to watch something that is an Asian production. And as you were saying just then, how it your critique of it is that it could be set anywhere is probably like one of the reasons why I wouldn't watch it, because it's just like,
and the show feels very American for all its like K-drama antics. The vibe of it is very American. It's not something you'd like, I think.
So like at that point, like it's more like, why wouldn't I just watch, you know, a Korean show instead? Because there's quite a few of these like good coming of age romance dramedies. I mean, like the most popular one is Reply 1999, which was really popular. I haven't seen it. There was another one. It's got the girl from The Handmaiden in it. It was called 2025-21. Yeah. So I mean, there's good stuff that have this setting, but like I just watch the Asian stuff. And that's completely understandable. Like this show, it's not for everyone, but I think for what it is, it's harmless and it's not offensive. I didn't find it offensive in any way. There's an Aussie actor in it as well. He plays an Australian character, which is quite fun. Is it like super grating to hear the accent?
Well, it's not grating. It's more funny than grating, I would say.
Okay.
And he does sound like really Australian. What's the guy's name? Peter Thirnwald.
I don't know who that is.
So he was raised in the Gold Coast. And he is an adopted South Korean kid. So like the character he plays in Exo Kitty is also an Australian that was adopted from South Korea. So I guess like he's kind of drawing on his experience, his real life experience. So he does a great job, I think. It's really funny when you see an Australian in an American show and they're just being Australian. He just seems like a guy that I went to school with, you know what I mean?
It can get a bit distracting though, but actually I do want to kind of come back to that point.
So that's my segue to the movie that we're going to talk about today, which is The Stranger. Yes.
Yeah, this movie was recommended to me by a friend of mine at dinner with her maybe about a week ago, and she said, check this movie out, because we were talking about Aussie films, and I talked about what are some good Aussie movies to watch. And then she said, watch this movie. It's quite interesting. I think you'd like it. And I'd seen this movie advertised last year. So there was a little bit of press. But as, you know, part of the course for Aussie films, It was probably not very successful, even in its own country. I could be wrong about that. I don't know about the charts of Netflix.
Well, I'd say it premiered at Cannes.
Yeah.
Right. And there was a very limited theatrical release. But yeah, it did go to Netflix. I remember vaguely seeing it in the top 10 for a little bit. Probably at the time of its release. But like I've seen the thumbnail here and there. But yeah, I honestly didn't know it was an Australian production. Because the thumbnail is Sean Harris for the most part.
Yeah, who is not an Australian actor. He's a British actor. Yeah.
Right. Which, you know, like could have fooled me from his performance in this movie.
Yeah.
Maybe a spoiler warning. Like, if you haven't seen this film... I think whatever Tavi and I say about this film probably won't detract from your enjoyment of it.
Yeah.
But we will probably talk like pretty much full spoilers, I reckon.
Yeah, it's a pretty hard movie to talk about.
Yeah, I don't think it's a spoiler-heavy film, but like...
Yeah, not really.
From the outset, like, the setup is like pretty important, I guess. So if you want to go into it with you know, without knowing anything, probably go watch it and then come back to us. I mean, leave a like first before leaving us.
Smash the like button
because it is quite good. I think this is a really good movie about a terrible situation.
It's I mean the plot of the movie is Joel Edgerton, who is our protagonist, is an undercover police officer who is trying to get information, or basically investigating Sean Harris's character. He goes by the name Henry Teague initially, but basically they suspect him of murdering a boy. It's based off a real case, but I don't think that they use the real name.
I didn't know this going into the movie, but it is based on the real-life disappearance of Daniel Morecambe.
Yeah, that's it. But I don't think they used that name in the film, because I think the family didn't want anything to do with this movie. So,
which, fair enough, I reckon.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, it's a pretty traumatizing experience. But so it's him and a few like police officers, or like a team, I guess, and they basically create this whole underground mob, like fake underground mob, to like get Sean Harris, who's been released from prison. So
this is a real thing that happens.
Yeah, this is a true story.
They call it the Mr. Big police procedure.
Yes,
so
that's it. I was going to talk about that.
An undercover sting operation that cops use to elicit confessions from suspects in cold cases, most typically murder cases. So the police, like you said, create this fictitious criminal organization and seem to indoctrinate the suspect into the organization. And then when the subject is comfortable with them and keen to continue working with them, they elicit a confession on their past crimes under the guise of covering the crimes up. So yeah, I mean, that's what. Yeah. Like when I started watching this film, and then it was revealed that Joel Edgerton is a cop, and everybody pretty much that Henry Teague is interacting with is an undercover cop. I was like, this, because I thought, I didn't know this was based on a true story. So I was like, okay, this is a pretty cool setup. Like this is a cool thing, like for cops. This is like Departed-esque kind of stuff.
Yeah, Departed, yeah.
It's like pretty deep subterfuge. But then when I learned that it is based on a real story, I was like, oh my God, this is terrible. Like that this is actually happening.
I really like this movie. I think this is one of the best Australian films I've seen. And I've seen like quite a few like really good Australian movies recently. Ones that we'll talk about in future episodes. But yeah, it's like, this is probably the most realistic depiction of an undercover operation that I've ever seen depicted in a movie. Just with the way that there's kind of... Well, the first of all, it's the way that everyone talks to each other. It's very, like, well, it's very gravelly. That's one thing.
It's
but
so
just
gravelly.
Like, it's so gravelly.
So much gravitas in this film.
but it's-
Everybody sounds like they've smoked 20 packs a day for like the last 20 years of their life. Oh, all right. All right, yeah.
But it's just like everything seems so like natural and almost undramatized in this movie. There's never really a point in the film where anyone loses their shit, but there's this tension throughout the whole movie, and it's not a violent movie either. It's actually, I mean, what it's based on, of course, is a horrific situation, but there is basically no physical violence in this movie. But what I really loved about like just the conversation, it's the way everyone talks in this movie. It's very Australian, but not in that kind of grading way that we were talking about before, you know, like when you're talking about that show. I've already forgotten the name. Exo Kitty, yeah. But like even like, you know, sometimes we've talked about maybe in other episodes of this podcast where we're like, oh, if we hear an Australian accent, it's always like always stands out. It's always just like grating. It just sounds, and people like hate it. Like I know a lot of like Australian friends that, oh, I hate like hearing the accent in a production, and it's kind of sad because it's like it can sound really cool, and like as you're saying, like with the really gravelly gravitas that's in every single character in this movie. It's just like,
everybody has a big bushy beard.
Yeah, everyone's got a fucking massive Ned Kelly bushy beard. Yeah.
And like Sean Harris, like, I honestly, when I saw him in this film, I was like, this guy must be Australian with the way that he's nailing this performance. But no, he's from the UK. And like, but his depiction of this guy, this like transient guy that's kind of like, he's just a drifter and he's got like a criminal history and he's a bit dodgy and all the stories he tells is kind of like there's something not quite right about him, but at the same time you know that he's kind of like been brought up hard, like it's so spot on of a depiction of this kind of person. And when we've seen these people around as well. Like you catch a tram or a train anywhere in Australia and you probably run into one of these guys.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, Sean Harris knocks it out of the ballpark in this movie. And I quite like him in other movies. He's always like, as I was saying, Harry Brown, he's always played like a ratty villain guy, you know, and someone who's very like usually quite unlikable. I think his most famous role is he's in like Ghost Protocol, Mission Impossible.
He's in a couple of Mission Impossible films.
Yeah, and he's got like because he's
Rogue
got
Nation.
He's got he has really ratty features. You know, he's got like a sharp face, long sharp nose, and like beady eyes. But he's depicted in this movie because he's playing a murderer.
But you don't know that at the start.
You don't know that, but. Yeah, I mean, if you know about the case, then you probably know, like, he's a murderer. But if, like, he doesn't play him as, like, unlikable. Because the whole movie, the whole tension is Joel Edgerton is the undercover cop who spends basically all the time with him. You know, he's with him. He's, like, the driver.
He has to pretend to be his friend for for months.
But, like, and the thing I love about this movie is that whole theme of, like, whether or not like Joel Edgerton is like legitimately becoming his friend, you know, like because becoming undercover and going undercover for that long with someone, you know, who is a detestable human being and done detestable things, but is also still very quite human. He just like Sean Harris's character just wants like a connection with someone, you know. There's a scene where he kind of shows some sexual interest in Joel Edgerton. So it's
and the way that the way that the character of Henry is set up from the start as well, you do kind of feel bad for him because he's clearly been brought up on hard times. Like he's like probably come from just a long line of people that have just not been able to kind of get a break, not been able to get educated and whatnot. So, and you like if you are Australian, and this probably translates to different cultures as well. Like if you are Australian, like you know what this person is about, right? And like they are a criminal. Like this guy is a criminal. Even if he's not a murderer, he's still done crimes and stuff. So there's no excusing that kind of behavior, but you kind of get it, right? Like, and yeah, he kind of says that, you know, he's lonely, he doesn't have a chance to talk to people, that kind of stuff. He's just looking for a place to kind of belong, and that's why he like takes so quickly to the setup of like the guy he meets on the bus, like says that he wants to introduce him to another guy that might have some jobs for him, even though these are crimes. He's like, I don't do violence, but I'll do some crimes, you know. So he like seems like a decent enough guy, even though he's a criminal. And then when you find out that the reason why they're trying to get him is because he's suspected of abducting and murdering a kid, then you're like, oh no, no, I shouldn't be rooting for this guy, actually.
It's a weird thing to like put in a film, that like you don't hate the antagonist, and like you don't even really know if he's an antagonist in this film. It's almost like he's the protagonist, and like maybe Joel Edgerton is the antagonist.
Right. Yeah. If you had no background on the case, you might be thinking, oh, maybe this guy didn't do it. You know, maybe they've got the wrong guy. And I wanted to talk about the language again, and it being very Australian. Like, there's no violence in this movie, but what it's superseded by is the coarse language and basically the liberal use of the C word, but not it's not overdone in this movie. Like, it's not every second. It's actually very natural. If you want to like listen to how Australians talk regularly, then you can watch this movie, because the way Joel Edgerton uses that word a lot in this movie, and maybe Sean Harris does a few times, but it becomes just like second nature. Like, it's not. I didn't even notice it. I didn't even notice it.
Yeah. But when he first said it, I'm just like, oh, that's. I noticed it when he first said it, but then I'm like, oh yeah, that's a very Australian way of saying it. You know, it's not like someone who. It's not like the person who wrote the Cyberpunk 2077 script, you know, where it's like someone who's discovered swearing for the first time. It doesn't sound forced. It sounds so natural, which I really like about this movie, because this could have been like, if this was a cash grab movie, it could be like, there's no swearing in this movie at all. It's all like, you know, and like, I think you can do that. Maybe a Christopher Nolan could have done that. But like, what makes this movie Australian is the language, the coarse language, because you are in a situation where you are basically under the pump 24/7, you know. And we see a lot of scenes where Joel Edgerton is going home to his kid, which I quite like, because like, you think if you're undercover officer, like, you know, when you watch films like The Departed or any other, which I love, by the way, like you are like living with the criminals all the time. It's like 24/7, but there are times where it's like, yeah, you need to take a break, you know, you need to go home and live your life. But you can see how it is starting to affect Joel Edgerton. You know, he starts becoming like quite overprotective over his kid and stuff, but it's never done in a way where he like he doesn't have a Daniel Day-Lewis drooling moment at any point. It's all quite subdued. It's very restrained,
and like the way he interacts with his kid as well is quite natural. It's like he swears at his kid a bit, but then he's like,
he does swear at his kid,
look at me,
I
apologize for swearing to you. So it's like very Aussie dad kind of vibes, and like the dialogue in general is very natural. Like we were saying off air, how like they could have thrown in phrase like "she'll be right, mate," like, you know, that kind of, it's like that would have probably fit in.
She's a flaming galah.
Tell him he's dreaming. But I appreciate that, you know, that they didn't do that, because
and I think that it makes this movie more accessible in its own way, but it's also like realistic, because like from a lot of Australian TV shows and stuff, they do use a lot of like colloquialisms, like very distinctly Australian colloquialisms, but you and I don't really talk like that.
Have you ever
quite
seen
often.
what's his name, Alf from
Oh,
Home and
yeah.
Away. Yeah, flaming galah.
yeah. We don't talk like that. Like, I think
I'm sure some people talk like that. But,
yeah. I think if you're if you're in the country or if you're maybe a tradie, like you would use those terms. Actually, no, if you're a tradie,
I don't think tradie.
More.
I don't think tradies say
You
that.
swear even more. It's just like we wouldn't even be allowed to like talk like that on air. Even though I've used that word a few times, but it's like I feel like this just the way they speak in this movie is very
like
realistic.
When we first get a glimpse on like the police operational side of things, I found myself thinking, wow, these are really eloquent police officers. And, and then I was like, yeah, I guess they would be. Like, if they're at this level where, like, they have to perform these kinds of operations, they must be smart. But, like, because my perception of cops is maybe
well, like Korean
not
officers.
that, you know? Like, I don't want to be harsh, but, like, the cops that I run into every day are not, like, this kind of Hollywood actor, like, type of cop. And it would be the same with like a Hollywood film that is talking about undercover cops, right? They're like, it's scripted. So obviously like the way that they talk is not realistic, I guess, to everyday life. Like they're not stuttering and shit or whatever and stammering like I'm doing now. But like the cops in this movie, it's like, yeah, it's scripted and it's eloquent, but it's still kind of
it's very
believable.
It's very professional feeling.
Yeah,
and that's another thing to the realism of this movie. I'm just like, wow. I mean, I was just saying about Korean officers, like who was just stumbling all over the place. You know,
like you compared this film to Memories of Murder, right?
Yeah. I'd say this is Australian Memories of Murder.
But the cops in Memories of Murder are way less competent than the ones in this
extremely incompetent. Whereas, I actually found it quite refreshing to watch this movie and see how competent the police were, but there was still like tension in everything. I mean, there is like a conflict where some of the higher up officers are less inclined to go for the arrest.
There's definitely a bit
Sean
of politicking.
Harris, of Henry, because like they're like, we need evidence, and it's like they're absolutely right as well. When they say that, it's like we can't just go in because one of the there's a female police officer character in this movie who kind of has a B plot, but like not too much focus, but she kind of like is the head of the investigation of like, she does a lot of the research and
she takes the investigation up to the point where they do the Mr. Big procedure.
And she's really trying to go for it, and she knows that like this is the guy, but there's just like always people above you. But it's not done in a way like if this was a Korean film, the guy that's above them that's saying the reasonable shit, they would be like super unlikable. There'd be like a ratty guy with glasses, and they're just trying to suck dick to their higher officers. Like and it's quite the contrast of like maybe Australian cinema versus Korean cinema. Well, maybe just this particular film in general is that like the people, because of how you were saying how eloquent, how professional everyone is, it's just like they're quite reasonable. And like one of the guys is like, I'm not going to authorize this unless you have this. I'm like, like I want them to go for Sean Harris's character, but it's also like, maybe you're right as well. And maybe this is also to the point of like Henry, who is revealed to be Peter Morley, because he's also like likable in a sense as well. Like you kind of understand the friendship between Joel Edgerton and Sean Harris. There's quite a few layers to this movie. I mean, I'm just talking about it now. It's quite it's really good. Like, and it's really. It gives me hope to see like a film like this that can come out of Australia.
This movie is quite tense, right? And it's such a slow burn, right? But like it does this really cool thing of it throws enough jump scares in there.
Oh yeah, there are some jump scares.
It's really grounded, but it uses this trick of throwing in a few jump scares that kind of mess with the reality of the film. So as an audience member, you're always kind of uncertain as to like when another scare might happen. So that way, like every time the music starts to swell or kind of like the BGM devolves into like this kind of dissonant noise, you get that kind of creeping feeling that something bad is going to happen.
Yeah, and it's...
Even though it rarely does.
Yeah, it's true. And it's used like to perfection in this film, because that is probably what it feels like to be undercover for that long, where you are befriending a child murderer who has his own child. You're a single dad, you know, and he's away all the time, and like that paranoia. And yeah, those jump scares, I mean, there's the really obvious one. I mean, I didn't know it was going to happen, but it's like he's in the car with Sean Harris, and that black lake in my eye. And I was watching this film at nighttime, like with the lights off. Yeah. And then I was like, oh shit. Like, I was actually quite, it got me because I didn't expect it.
There's a bit in Joel Edgerton's house where he like, he flicks on the light or something, and then Henry's just there, like with his mouth agape, just staring at him.
Yeah. That's
like, oh shit.
That's quite interesting, because it's obviously like playing with like some of the horror genre tropes, but this is by no means a horror, and I think those are basically the only two jump scares in this film. But like they give you enough just to feel uneasy throughout the whole movie. Because like the difference between like say a big budget Hollywood blockbuster undercover film, let's say like The Departed, you know, you can have a lot of like action scenes, you can have a lot of like killing, like mob killings and stuff, and those are really fun to watch in The Departed. Like I love those scenes. But yeah, you know, Australian cinema is not going to have the same budget, like nowhere near the same budget,
especially this film that was shot during COVID in South Australia.
So you have to be like quite clever with how you keep your audience entertained, I guess. And like it's a slow burn movie, and like with a lot of the movies that people like these days, this movie will probably not be for everyone. Because
it's not long though, I think.
It's not long, but not a lot viscerally happens, I would say. There's no
like no shootouts, there's no action scenes, there's no violence really.
There's no violence. Yeah, there is no violence. There's no scare. There's none of the even from Korean cinema. There's none of the Korean stabbings that you and I really enjoy. There's none of that. But it is just like this is a beautifully shot film, and the way that everything is like shot and the way that the tension plays throughout the whole movie, it keeps it very like compelling. Like I would have loved to have watched this in a theater, just to be in that like darkened room atmosphere. It's this is like this is one of those films that I think would have really benefited,
because it is very dark, the subject matter, and in general like the way that it's filmed. There is
no humor in this movie. Whatsoever. And that,
which makes it hard to do an entertaining podcast episode.
I feel like we're doing all right. I don't know. We'll see how we go. But I mean, like, it's just not having to rely. I mean, like, I may as well just like talk shit about Marvel again. But you know how like there's always that sense of like is it bathos where they have to like put in a fucking joke just for the sake of it, you know, just because like, you know, people just need to laugh all the time, otherwise it's too heavy, you know, I can't watch it, it's too heavy. But like this movie just like believes in, it knows the audience that it's going for, and it just like kind of goes all the way with it, but like just all the way, but also very like restrained as well. I think this isn't the debut movie from the director. I think Thomas Wright. So
I think he had one more feature before this film. Which I have not seen.
But like, I mean, to shoot a movie like this during COVID, I'm just looking at the Wikipedia. I'm looking at the we were saying before off air. Thomas Wright looks exactly like Sean Harris and Joel Edgerton in this movie. He's like, I feel like his direction was just make him look like me.
He's got a big old Ned Kelly beard.
He's got a big Ned Kelly beard. But I think he comes from like a theatre background, just having a look, and he's done a lot of like
Melbourne. He's a Melburnian.
He was in the movie Sweet Country which came out a few years ago now, and it's apparently quite good, which is probably something that I should watch. Yeah, I think I'll give a few more of these Aussie movies a watch. But yeah, just I rated this movie like really high, just because I don't think I've seen anything really like this. I've seen the Undercover Story, you know, I've seen Cops and Robbers Story, and I've seen the Hong Kong versions, I've seen the Hollywood versions, maybe some Korean versions, but like the way that I hadn't seen an Australian version, and this movie is Australian, but like I wouldn't even almost like classify it as an Australian, particularly Australian film. It's a crime thriller.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think like there are kind of Australianisms in it. Obviously Joel Edgerton as well is in there, but
this fucking cunt, mate.
Yeah.
Stop.
But it doesn't sell itself as an Australian product.
Yeah, it's not like here's a Sharon meat pie, mate.
Yeah. It's not shoved down our throat. You know, it portrays Australia in the most realistic light that I've seen for a while.
Would you like to come into my house have some Foster's beer? Even though we don't drink Foster's.
No Foster's beer. They drink plenty of Stubbies here, Tavi, and none of them are VBs. None of them are Foster's. It's amazing.
Yeah. It'd just be craft beer. It was Australia.
Probably be fucking Tigers, you know?
Yeah, got this. Yeah, just really nice, Chinese beer, man. Nice succulent Chinese beer, there's no you're not gonna go to the footy on the weekend. You know, it's very like it doesn't really draw attention to itself, which maybe I have like some not of this movie, but just saying criticisms of saying like probably like earlier 2020s, late 2010s Asian American productions is like drawing attention to the Asian identity a little bit too much to itself. It's like, here I make dumplings with my mom, and like we go to blah blah blah. And it's like, it's I don't know, it's a bit on the nose. Where it's like here, like none of the Australian-ness is on the nose. It's all like very subtle, as I was saying, with the language, liberal use of the C word, big bushy beards. Everyone's got a fucking and it's just like but it's just like really good to see really nice cinematography in Australian production. Because like another thing I think about when I watch Australian media is that really like crappy, overexposed light look that they use for every single show, whether it's a drama, it's a comedy, it's a crime thriller. They all have this look where it's just like, I feel like it's literally turn the camera on, you know? And this is probably where like the conception of like being a filmmaker is a joke of a job, where we don't do anything but press record and then like put it on the computer, you know? It's just like, you
gotta add LUTs as well.
You gotta add LUTs, but it's just like really precise cinematography, but also quite simple as well. Like a simply edited movie. There's no like trips of like going back and forth, like especially like we were talking about the jump scares, like you think it's going to be this is just a present moment, but then it's suddenly a very surreal moment as well. And there's no like real fancy editing tricks there, but it's just like the diegesis of the movie is just like really well told. And
I think the sound design as well plays a big part in selling the tension of the film. Because it is quite like off-putting at times. And also making everyone sound gravelly as fuck.
I really, really like this movie. And I can't wait to see like more like really fantastic Australian films. I don't know. I don't think I've got too much more to say about The Stranger.
Same.
I think I've sucked its dick enough.
No, like you said, we'll probably cover a few more Australian films in the future, because there's some good shit out there, stuff that we've already seen and stuff that we are going to see. I'm intentionally making my voice gravelly and raspy at this point, and I'm sure Risky will be able to enhance it even further, because it's just fucking cool to sound like this, isn't it, mate?
Whoa, mate. Isn't it the thing where like you really notice the Aussie accent in foreign films, because like there's this thing when Aussies go overseas who aren't like particularly stereotypically Aussie. They just like turn their Aussiness up.
Did you do that when you went to Japan?
Yeah, I think I did. It's like, oh, yeah, bloody hell, man.
I think you did.
Yeah. No, I was pretty, I could be pretty Aussie. Yeah. It's like, I do say like, she'll be right a lot. Oh, she'll be right. Oh, she'll be wrong, mate.
No worries.
Yeah,
mate.
no worries. Yeah.
But guys, what did you think of The Stranger? Did you enjoy it? Are you going to watch it off the back of listening to this episode? Are there any other Australian films that we should have a watch of? Let us know. You can get in touch with us at twoasianblokes@gmail.com. You can join our Facebook group to be part of the conversation, or you can follow us on Instagram at twoasianblokes to see what we're up to. All right, mate?
All right, mate. But yeah, just because we're covering Australian content now, does that mean that we're allowed to talk about Extraction 2 when that comes out?
Is he Australian in that film?
He is Australian in that film.
I don't remember anything about his character.
No, we'll try to keep it like.
What's his name,
I
Tavi?
guess. I don't know. Chris Hemsworth.
Yeah, we'll cover it. I like those movies.
Yeah,
I mean, I like that movie.
I like the first movie.
I'm sure the second movie will be good. Apparently, there's like a 23-minute one shot or something along those lines. So that's
really?
fun.
Yeah, that sounds cool. Well, if we watch it and we like it enough, we've opened the door to talk about, white stuff, Australian stuff, and then all our faithful listeners who thought we only talk about Asian stuff. Oh, these guys are bunch of phonies. You lied. It only took you 2 years, not even 2 years before you gave away to the white man.
Maybe we can do New Gold Mountain. That's got Asians and Australiana in it.
Yeah. Nah. I did watch an episode of that, and I don't want to be mean to that production, but production values are really good, but just a bit dull.
A bit mid, would you say?
A bit mid, yeah. Yeah. And that's, pretty mid. Watch one episode. Probably won't finish it. Yeah.
All right, mate. It's probably fine.
Oh, yeah, mate. All right. All right, guys. Sign off on that one, mate.
Until next time, take care of yourselves.
All right. See you later, mate.